Well, I applied to hundreds of job openings and I got selected for maybe 3 until they realized that I was based in France. I didn't have a visa. And eventually I got one who was willing to interview me. And that was the one I got. And quite straight away, I relocated to San Francisco to join Uber's headquarters. It was really the startup mode, and it had to be very, very fast. We were making huge, and when I say huge, big money decisions quickly. And also there was really a huge trust in data science and in data guys, data people. So whatever we said, they would do it.
This episode is brought to you by Training Data. If you're new in data science and want to get into the field, or if you're already in the field but want to progress, well, Training Data is the platform for you. They offer courses on feature engineering and selection, model tuning, interpretability, and much more. You will get both the math and the intuition behind each method, but also Python code ready to power your own projects. So if you're interested, visit the link in the description and don't forget to use the code AI Stories to get a 10% discount. All right, so hello everyone and welcome to the AI Stories podcast. I'm Leiser, I'm a senior data scientist and I will be your host. So today our guest is Marianne Ducournau. Marianne is the head of data science at Qonto, which is a European leading fintech. Before this, she also had a lot of experiences and she worked at Amazon, but also worked at Uber as a data scientist for 6 years. So lots of things to discuss around AI in this episode. If you enjoy our conversation, please comment, share the episode and leave a 5-star review. All right, so let's start with the beginning. How did you actually get into the world of data science and AI? How did you get into the field?
Yeah, so I got into this world after graduating from École Polytechnique. So there I received a general scientific education with a strong foundation in mathematics, physics, mechanics, statistics, everything scientific. I had that. And during my last year, I had to choose a specialization. And back then, finance was a big trend, and many of my older alumni had opted for careers in this field. So at first, I was thinking of doing it. But well, since then, when I was at Polytechnique in 2008, there was this financial crisis that reshaped the landscape and really cut the trend of finance. So it was out of the table. There was another emerging trend that was consulting, but I didn't like the concept, or it was not that appealing to me. I was more interested in being part of something and contributing to it rather than being an external consultant. So then I thought, okay, I have a passion for physics and mechanics, but I realized that the industries was getting older, the opportunities in this field was limited. So ultimately, I thought that I would do statistics and microeconomics. I love the subjects, but it was really more like the last options I had, to be honest. And I don't regret the decision, but to be fair, that was the journey, and it led me to continue my education at NSAE, so National School of Economics and Statistics, and then work for INSEE, which is the French National Institute of Statistics.
Okay, and so your first job in data science was at INSEE, right?
Yeah, that's right. It was not called data science at the time. Was a statistician manager, I think we would name it like so. But yeah, that was at INSEE in France.
And when was the first time you learned about stats and math? It was during your bachelor at École Polytechnique. That's when you started to get into it.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, in high school we were doing maybe some little probabilities and things like that. But then it was during my polytechnic journey, I kept learning statistics at NSAE and really applied those skills at INSEE.
Okay, so tell me a bit more about your first job at INSEE. Then, what was it about? What did you like? What did you enjoy it less? Can you tell me more about this?
Sure. Let me give you maybe a bit more about the context. So picture me. So I was based in Nantes, so not Paris. Nantes is a regional capital in France. There was an INSEE office there because there is an INSEE office in every regional capital. And there I was managing a team of 12, 15 data analysts. So that was really my first job. And that's not something that you can see everywhere, like first job managing 15 people. But that's how public works in France. I was an administrator of INSEE. And those 15, 12 data analysts or statisticians, as we call them, were responsible for conducting various studies related to the region. So really the geographical scope was the region. And those studies covered a wide range of topics. So it included demographics, inflation, employment, GDP. Essentially, they were mirroring the extensive data that INSEE produces. So whatever data INSEE had, we would use them and make a study out of it on the regional scope of the region of Nantes.
Okay. And so if I can just already zoom into this, because quite a lot of information. The first thing that I think is very interesting is you arrive there, it's your first job, and you're managing 10, 15 people. How was the experience, and how do you feel about this? Like, you arrive in your first job and you have to manage such a big number of people. Were you ready? What did you feel, and how was the experience?
So I don't know if it was just like me being unconscious or something like that, but I felt ready, and ultimately I think it was a great experience from my point of view and from my team's point of view. I had good feedback, so I guess it was positive. One thing I should mention is the fact that during my education, I had a similar experience. Like, I had to lead a peloton in the army of 20 people. And so that's not a manager-employee relationship, but still, like, I was the head of a peloton of 20 people, and I had to train them and show to them how the military works. So I think that this experience that lasts for 4 months, and this was really part of my education at Polytechnic, helped me then to not question the fact that I had to manage 15 people. And also, those were not direct reports. So I had only 3 direct reports. And for me, that was just fine and normal.
Okay, so your previous experience at the army already prepared you for the stats management.
Yeah, that's what I think. Yeah.
What were the things that were in common then between your management at the army and management of statisticians, and what were the things that were different and that you weren't ready for?
That's good one. One big similarity is the fact that the orders or the decisions are super top down. And so if I say that we have to work on this thing, we'll work on this thing. And I'm saying this because my manager told me to work on this topic. And there is no, are you sure? Is it the right thing for the company? Like, no question asked, and we do the job. So that also eases the leadership position, if I can say that, because orders are orders, and your team is going to follow you no matter what, even if you are going into a wall. That's the problem sometimes. So that's one big similarity, and that can be helpful in management.
Okay, great. So just to recap, you arrive at your first job, you start managing 10 to 15 people straight away. Can you maybe summarize what you worked on there? Maybe one particular project that you worked on, and what did you like in the public sector, and what did you dislike?
Like I said, my team had to create studies on a wide range on topic, and most of the time, those analyses were commissioned by public stakeholders to ensure really that the work had a real impact. One concrete example I can share with you is something that I did back in 2013, so 10 years ago already. And we collaborated with the Conseil Régional, so it's a local public stakeholder, in order to forecast the need for high schools in the region by 2025. So 2025 was 12 years later at the time. So we leveraged INSEE's data, so population size in the region, age distribution, birth rates, what else? Migration patterns, even school enrollment rates. And with all of this information, we built a model out of it to predict how many young people would require high school education 12 years later. And we found the numbers with confidence intervals, of course, and we shared that with the Conseil Régional. We published it, and this helped the Conseil Régional really to plan the constructions for high schools effectively. Because obviously you don't build a high school overnight. It also helped to make sure they would train and hire the good numbers of teachers, and really plan for that.
Okay, very cool. So even, I didn't know you could, the state was using this information, forecasting the demand for schools so that they can plan all of this, and I guess maybe build new schools if the demand would increase by quite a lot.
And that was the case for Pays de la Loire, which is the region of Nantes. We had to build new schools because that was the region with the highest natality rate also in France.
And so that's what the state ended up doing.
Yep, they did it. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So sounds like some very exciting projects. What are the pros and cons of working for the public sector, and why did you then move to the US and to Uber, which is quite a different setting than INSEE?
Yeah, it's quite different, and we will talk about this. And so on the positive side, I was exposed to a super wide variety of topics. And I also was able to access really high quality data sets with very precise data at really the individual level. So it's obviously anonymized, but INSEE has data super granular on people, and even geographically, you can, if you like maps like I do, you can create very, very detailed map at a super fine geographical granularity. So those two were really amazing. Besides that, I really enjoyed the people there, and people were passionate, I think, about their mission. And talking about mission, I also had this sense to make a tangible difference in the society. I usually don't like this sentence, make the world a better place. I think it really sounds cheesy, or it really looks like a cliche. But honestly, it kind of was the sentiment I had looking at it back then. Or just I can express it maybe differently, I was moving my stone or making my part, and really helping and shaping public decision for the best. So that was the positive part. now you also asked me for the downside, and I see too many. No, mainly. Sorry, I see two mainly, and that's what led me to leave the public sector. The first one is a sense of unfairness in terms of career progressions and rewards in general. Because when you join, your trajectories, your promotions, your salaries is predetermined for the next decades and even up to the end of your career, if you stay at INSEE for your whole career. And I think it's quite demotivating, and I witnessed situations where hardworking individuals were really receiving the same recognitions as some who didn't put the same effort into their work. And for me, who value justice, this was difficult to witness. So that's the first one. And the second one is, probably not a surprise, but INSEE is an administration, so it has a bureaucratic environment, and there are some processes that are too complicated for simple requests. And for instance, I wanted to use an open source software like R or Python instead of the licensed one that we were using, that was SAS. And I asked the permission for that, and it took me 6 months to receive an answer that was frustrating. No, you can't.
Okay, yeah. So things are quite. So I guess it's quite a big infrastructure as well. Many people working there, so things move slowly or not that much.
Yeah, but I think that INSEE size was pretty similar to Uber's when I left Uber, so the size is not an excuse.
Well, yeah, thanks for sharing this first experience. I think it's quite clear and quite an interesting one. Can you then maybe dive into how you transitioned from being in North, working in the public sector, to moving to the US, working in a big tech company? Quite different jobs, I guess. So can you talk about your transition?
For the transition itself, it was quite clear, quick, because I left INSEE one day in July, and 1 week later I was working at Uber, and the change was drastic. Then, if you ask me on how did I make the change, I applied to hundreds of job openings, and I got selected for maybe 3 until they realized that I was based in France. I didn't have a visa, and eventually I got one who was willing to interview me, and that was the one I got, and I joined Uber.
Okay, great. So you stayed at Uber for like 6 years, something like that, from what I understand. So I'm curious to hear your story from when you arrived at Uber to 6 years later. How did you start, and how did your role evolve over those 6 years?
So my journey at Uber began in 2015. So it was 3 years after the company was launched in France. And quite straight away, I relocated to San Francisco to join Uber's headquarters. I started as an individual contributor, so I was a junior data scientist within the finance team. And my team was built out of 6 individuals. We were from the US, from India, from China, Russia, and from France. So 5 different nationalities for a team of 6. And we were playing a crucial role in supporting the chief financial officer, who was the second most influential person in the company after the CEO and founder, Travis Kalanick. And so when I joined, Uber still had a startup spirit, really. My day-to-day work involved addressing ad hoc business requests that kept coming from the CFO through my manager, who was his direct report. And these requests were business requests really, but they demanded to leverage data to provide insights and solutions. Uber was extremely data driven. I'm relating it now after like several experiences, and I can really compare the way companies make decisions. So yeah, business questions from the CFO, and guys, please crunch the data and help me make the best decision. Then, if you want, I can go through a different example of what my team was doing.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, quite interesting.
So some of my teammates were really specialized in addressing questions related to Uber's operation in China, because there at the time we were having a significant financial loss. And really, when I say significant, that's quite a euphemism, because we were losing billions of dollars annually.
Wow.
So yeah, like not a deficit that you want to have. And so, yeah, those Chinese teammates were really focused on China. And given the number at stake, you can imagine that there was quite some pressure on them. They kept traveling between the US and China, and they had a very hectic personal life, working on urgent requests days and nights. And on my end, I had similar requests, I'm going to detail with you, but I was not focused on China. I was everything but China. And typical questions or typical stuff that I was studying were price elasticity in European capitals, especially in London. The business question was, shall we increase the price of Uber X, which is a Uber product in London? And the answer was, okay, let's see, like if we increase the price of Uber X, we'll get more money per trip for sure, but we'll get probably less trip. So where is the good trade-off? And for that, I studied quite a lot price elasticity. Fun fact is that price elasticities are very, very different from one country to the other. So yeah, that was cool. And then I also worked on.
Sorry to cut you, but I'm interested in this project, so keen to dive a bit more. Where to start? The first thing is, how do you get this price elasticity? Let's say for a single country like London, is it a model that's, I guess you will need to predict how demand and how demand varies as a function of price. Do you also A/B test that to collect data? How does this work exactly? And how do you then come to, what kind of answer do you then give to your CFO?
I think you kind of named it all. We would rely on like historical data and tests. So, well, not A/B test, but just test. And I'll tell you more about this historical data, because at the time we were experimenting with prices. So 1 week you could have a certain price, and the week after, for some reason, the local team would say, "Oh no, I think we are too cheap. Let's increase the price," and they would increase the price. And obviously, like all those data was being recorded. And for us, the data scientists who came after 2, 3 months or 6 months of having local team experimenting with their prices, we could just like really do a scatter plot of number price per trip, and what does it give in terms of number of trips on the y-axis. That was the points that were useful, and that we could leverage to get a sense of where were the inflection points, if I can say that, or where the demand would start decreasing after some threshold price. And also we were able to run a test. So we were not doing A/B test because I think it's because it was too complicated from a technical standpoint, and we don't have any engineering backup or anything like that. So we would just contact the local team, and say, hey, for the next 2 weeks, can you try? Like, we are missing. We think that your price elasticity in your city is similar to this because of the past data we have, but in order to confirm our thoughts, we would like you to have to change the price for 1 week or 2 weeks in your city and set it to that amount. And this would give us another data point. This approach has many caveats because it's not an A/B test. So maybe you're comparing data points at different time, and we know that it has a caveat and drawback, because maybe the evolution of your number of trips is not due to the evolution of price, but just the growth of your business anyway. But we are trying to account for that and make it make it work anyway. So it was a bit quick and dirty, but that's the resources we had.
So is it right to say that this price elasticity problem, like the optimum, this is kind of a quadratic function where if the price is like very low, you won't get any trips because the driver are not going to accept the trips because they're not going to make money. And then as price increase, you make more and more trips until some point. And then if prices are like too expensive, then it starts to decrease again because, the user is not going to order trips if they are too expensive. So it's and you had to find the optimum, basically the right equilibrium.
Yeah, that's exactly that. Yeah.
So by testing different prices over time, you managed to get a feel of how the number of trips would evolve over time as a function of price.
Yes, that's how we approached it. Absolutely.
And so 2 questions. The first one is, what was the output? Like, what was your answer? Was it like, okay, we need to increase the prices from X to Y? Or was it a range or a probability or some things to try? What was the output of your model?
The output was a point with a confidence interval or a range. So we would say to the CFO and the local team, okay, like, given your historical data, given this further data points that we got from you, we recommend you to have to set the fares to this amount. More or minus, and we would give an interval to let the local team add their own touch based on their knowledge of the ground.
Okay, and I guess then you would compare this with maybe A/B test this or compare this with the previous approach to see if this one is better, or you would just roll it out to everyone?
Just roll it out. It was really the startup mode, and there was no and also it was startup mode, and it had to be very, very fast. We were making huge and when I say huge, like big money decisions quickly. So it was we would not A/B test our recommendations most of the time, at least at the beginning when I joined Uber. So no test, and also there was a huge trust in data science and in data guys, data people. So whatever we said, they would do it.
What's the impact of one decision? Like, not the exact number, but in order, like you say, to change the price from X to Y, what could be the impact in a city like London or another city? How much extra money can you
I don't recall the exact numbers, but for sure it was it was amounting millions of pounds, euros per year.
Okay, so quite a big impact.
Yes, quite a big impact for this one. Yeah.
Okay, cool, very interesting. So that was in your first few years at Uber, if that's right. And then you evolved, you've stayed there for 6 years, you became senior, you became a lead data scientist as well, if I'm not mistaken. Can you dive into your evolution and how you evolved from this team to becoming a lead at Uber?
So in those early years, besides price elasticity, there was another big topic that we were answering as well in the quick and dirty way, which was when should we launch Uber Pool in a city? So Uber Pool is a Uber product. It's a car pooling product. And if you launch Uber Pool too early in a city, it leads to poor user experiences because there is a lack of matching riders. So you want to find the right timing for that. And in order to do so, you need to anticipate. So you first in every city, first the product that we were launching was Uber X. And we need to determine when Uber X would reach this critical threshold so that we could launch Uber Pool. And this when required a forecast. So I worked on forecast then for quite a long time, like 2 years. And those demands kept coming over and over again. So then we decided to scale our answer, not only to work more efficiently, but also to work more precisely on our answers and be able to really address better the forecasting needs. So I evolved in this path, on the forecasting path, and became a lead data scientist on what we call the financial planning.
Okay, which was financial planning so basically you had to predict when would UberX be. Is it some kind of maturity, like mature enough so that you can then launch Uber Pool?
Yeah, exactly. We can call it like this. Exactly. And but the financial planning initiative is something really very like broader than just UberX maturity. It's one like of the most critical project at Uber, and it's super critical also in many companies. And my team, the team that I was leading, played a central role in providing monthly baseline forecasts. For numerous metrics. Like there were more than 300 metrics. So it included the number of trips per city, which was the first metric I ever had to forecast at Uber. But then there was not only this, there was the number of active riders, the number of active drivers, the number of new riders, the number of new drivers, the mileage, the average fare per trip, many tricks. And my team would provide this baseline to the rest of Uber. So it was a very complex machinery that operated both bottom up and top down. And it involved not only data science to provide numbers, but also data engineers who were responsible for the pipelines, for the data ingestions, software engineers who build a UI for financial people, local financial people to get to see their baseline forecast. This was true like across the globe in every location where Uber was operating. So it was about 400 cities at the time. And my team role was to, like I said, provide baseline, or what I can also call business as usual forecast, and models that could talk to each other so that the finance partners could also tweak the forecast and adjust them, and everything would adjust on the fly. So, for instance, initially we would provide forecast of active riders. I mentioned that, and forecast of trips. Let's just take those two metrics: active riders and trips. Mm-hmm. And so we would provide a baseline for the year to come, a monthly baseline forecast, and the local team could override the forecast of the active riders, adding more ambition, for instance, saying, okay, no, I think your forecast data science team is a bit too low. I think we will have more riders because also you didn't take into account this marketing campaign and we believe in it. So they would increase that number in the tool. And this would instantaneously propagate down the line through a cascaded model to the trips forecast. Obviously, it's not a linear thing. It was quite complex. But all the models of the first numbers plus the models linking all the numbers together were provided by my team. Again, 300 metrics, 400 cities. So that's a lot of different combinations. So that was huge.
Okay, so how do you do with all this number of models? Do you build them one by one, or do you have a framework to build some in parallel? Because some, I don't know, maybe within cities, they are quite similar, so you just don't really change them a lot. How do you do to build so many models? 300 times, I don't know how many cities, but
400.
That's quite a lot. That's quite a lot of models, I guess.
Yeah. Well, great question. I don't know, if I know what we did, but I don't know, probably that's not the perfect way or the best way, more efficient way to go. But how we did it is simply, history and legacy. We started our forecast actually only in the US only. So we had models that were working very well in the US for trips. We were focusing on one metric, trips, and one country, the US. And after that, still on trips, we were asked, can you help us on Europe? And so we noticed that the models were really not working in Europe. And the worst I remember was even Brazil. Brazil had a complete different growth. If we thought that it was growing fast in the US, in Brazil that was even another world. And as we added geos countries, we added more models for different cases of countries. And each time we were adding a new country, either we would reuse a model for that had been built for a similar country, or we will use create a new model for this new country. And so that's how we did it. And for instance, all Latin America countries were grouped together because they really had the same growing shape. Whereas in Europe, there was Northern Europe versus Southern Europe, and all had those two had different models. And then for when we added different metrics, it was kind of the same approach. We had almost 6 years to develop all of this. So it let us the time to experiment and build this complex machine of rules, if I can say, because we knew for the US, this model is the best. We knew that if the city is South America, this model is going to be the best, etc.
So one last question on this. How do you manage those models in terms of, first of all, do you need to deploy them or not? And do you monitor them? Because you've got so many models. How do you know if they still work, they don't work, if you need to change them? I guess it's hard to keep track of all of those. So how did you do that?
Yeah. So yes, they were deployed, and actually I only witnessed 2 cycles. So financial planning is something that happens once a year, twice if you're lucky and you do a rebase in June. But otherwise, it's really a process that starts at the end of the year where you forecast the full coming year.
Okay.
And I saw two financial planning cycles where we had this complex machinery in place. And the first one, we didn't have time to even log our forecast, what really happened. Everything was what really happened was not lost, but our forecast was overridden. I don't know really how it happened, but it was on the software engineering side. We lost our forecast, so not good. But we don't know really if the initial forecasts were eventually good or not. And then last year we had in place something to record the forecast as the time was going. We were comparing the forecast and the actuals, and we had we wanted to have a feedback loop in place, but actually COVID hit, and that. We just discarded everything, and it changed a lot of things.
Okay. No, very interesting to hear this experience. Managing quite a lot of models should be quite a challenge, and something you don't see in many startups. It's, I guess, big techs will have lots of models, but except big companies like Uber or Google, you don't see that very often.
Yeah.
So what's the secret to make this work with so many models, and how do you?
I think really the secret was again those 6 years. Well, crappy 2 first years, really playing with playing with every possible forecasting model. I knew every forecasting library that was there. I was there when Prophet became a thing also, and and then I had 4 more years. That's long, right? And that contrast with the fast pace environment I was in. 4 years to build something just to do baseline forecast. That's really long, and it allows you really to build something big and stable and performing pretty well. And when I say performing pretty well, I'm just saying this based on backtest, not based on actual comparison that we would have done afterwards. Because like I said, we did not.
So maybe one last question on Uber. So you started as a junior data scientist and you evolved to become a tech lead. What's your advice to progress in a big tech? Like, what do you need to do in order to do well and progress in a big company like this?
I guess do your job. That's really the best piece of advice I can give. And well, it can also, like, your question can bring us back to a previous question you had regarding the difference between in-state administration and the army. And I told you that one big similarity between those two is the fact that people would follow the orders, and if your manager is telling you to work on this, while you work on this, at Uber or in tech companies, scale up, I think you should also listen to your manager, but you should not hesitate to seek for opportunities to help the company in one way you find smart, and work on a side project, or even before working on it, like, share your ideas. If you have a good idea that you think that can have an impact, you should, you have to share this idea and suggest it, and maybe that's potentially a good project idea, and that will make your company succeed, or at least improve. So my advice would be, do your job, the one that you're paid for and you're asked to do, and also think bigger, keep an open mind, look at opportunities here and there in order to leverage your skills and apply them to answer the business questions that you can you can see around you.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot. So after Uber, well, you stay at Uber for 6 years. You work first on this price elasticity problem that we discussed, and then move to those baseline forecasting with over, 300 models per city. So this big challenging problem. You go from being a junior data scientist to becoming a tech lead. And after that, you work at Amazon for a bit, and then you have other experiences. But at some point, you arrive at Qonto as the head of data science. So I want to zoom into the Qonto experience now. First question is, what's Qonto? I don't know if all our listeners are familiar with it, and what's your role there?
Yeah, sure. So let's talk about Qonto. So it's a business finance solution that was launched in France 6 years ago. So quite a recent company. It operates in Europe, and it has become the European leader in financial management. It aims at simplifying the banking needs for small and medium enterprises, and also for independent professionals. And it simplifies everything from daily banking, bookkeeping, invoicing, and also spend management. Qonto has more than 400,000 customers. So like I said, we are in Europe, but more specifically for the moment, we are in 4 countries: France, where we started, Germany, Italy, and Spain. We are 1,300 employees at Qonto, quite a big company now. As for me, I joined Qonto little of over a year ago as the head of data science. And in this role, I had the unique opportunity to build the data science team, as there was no data science teams before me. So from the ground up. And my responsibilities include, hiring and training data scientists. Also, like ensuring that our team scales effectively. That's the one I would say. That's the first thing. Then second, my responsibility is to make sure that what we work on aligns with the company's strategic goals. So it also resonates with your previous question at Uber. So I have to make sure that we work on the right topics. That's the second thing. And the third part of my role is to raise internal awareness about the value of data science, what it can bring, spreading really the good practices across the company. It's not by definition or in its core a data-driven company, but I'm trying to help people understand the value of data in order to make insightful decisions.
Okay, 3 topics that I'm actually very interested in. Let me know which one we can dig into. But before we dive into those 3 topics, can you give an example of like Qonto, their product, and how they help SMEs? Like, what's your product? You said you have 400K customers. That's a lot. So looks like a very big company. So what's the product, just to make people understand a bit more the company?
Yeah, so the product is accessible through our website or through an app, and you can just like deposit your money on your Qonto bank account. So you can open a bank account with us. That's really the basic, what I call the daily banking offer. That's one thing. And as a like if you're a business, you have to have a bank account. So that's the one thing. And then it comes with different features on top of that. I mentioned the invoicing. where it's super easy in our product to generate those invoices.
So a bank account for SMEs, basically, and making life easier when you open a business and you want to set up a bank account, making life easier for them.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's dive into the 3 parts of your role. I'm quite interested in those. So the first one, you mentioned hiring a team, deciding on what to work on, and 3, raising awareness. So on the first one, like, what are the challenges of setting up a team? Like, you arrive and there are no data scientists. So what are the learnings from this, and what are the things that you should think about when you just arrive and you need to set up a team? Where do you start?
Well, I started. Well, I am in order to hire a team. I was not alone because we have a talent acquisition team at Qonto. So I worked with them in order to create this the job description of the profile of people I was looking for. And in that case, since I was building the team with the intent of working internally on choosing the right projects and make this internal network to make our work known. I knew that I could not myself support technically the team as I could have done if I was in another environment. So just all this to say that I needed senior and autonomous data scientists. So that's really the kind of people I looked for. So first criteria was that someone experienced, because I could not mentor the person otherwise. So yeah, we wrote a job description with this. And then checking the alignment of the values, cultural values of that person, the fit with myself, with Qonto's ambition. That were like, I think that's choosing the most important. Then regarding the technical side, there was a skill test to make sure that the person was meeting the technical bar. And then I didn't have any preconception of like this person should know this specific tool or this specific domain. Wanted some like people who were smart and who could learn and adapt. Yeah.
Okay, so but mostly looking for data scientists, no data engineers or software engineers needed in your team. It was full of data scientists, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, you got this right. The data department is as old as Qonto, probably, or almost.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least there was someone even in the first weeks of Qonto's life who was dedicated to data, who took it seriously. So the data engineering is already here, and we have a great data engineering team. So I really, my team is really focused on data science. The one that was the one part missing, really. How can we use the great data that we have and take some value out of it, some business value out of it? Yeah. So data scientist provides.
And that's the role of your team, to provide this value out of all the great data that you have in the company.
Yeah, exactly. I would summarize it this way. Provide insight, and not only insight, I would even go further, like provide action recommendations out of the data that we have. And one thing also I want to add is that, contrary to some other companies, here at Qonto, data science doesn't imply MLOps. There is no need to put things into production. It's really the recommendation that matters. So if most of our topics are one-shot topics, and we want to, we don't need to productionize things. there is another team that does that for fraud detection and things like that. And obviously there are data scientists as well, because they rely on data science model, but they are also quite heavily oriented towards software engineering, because they have to connect to our Qonto app in order to detect fraud, for instance.
Okay. And so the second part is more on deciding what to work on. Now that you've got all this data, you need to add value. Like, what do you do to decide what to work on? You've got, I guess, quite a lot of data. 400,000 customers is quite a lot. So what's your approach to make sure that you work on the right things?
Yeah, for that, so far we've been looking at only one metric, which is the North Stars metric for the moment of my team. This may change a little bit, but we are doing impact estimation of our projects even before starting any project. And this impact estimation means like you make hypotheses, like if I work on this and if I find this, what will be the impact in terms of euros of implementing this recommendation? Typical example is that there is if I improve the retention by 1% on this geographical scope, what will be the impact over 1 year in terms of euros? And doing this exercise at the beginning of every project really help us decide which project to invest on, which project that seems cool at first sight actually is probably not worth it because not impactful enough, and we may do it later, but we focus on monetary impactful projects.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting point, because in many companies you often do this part at the end of the project, and sometimes it's too late. First of all, there are I've done some projects where sometimes you don't know the impact or you don't do it, and that's like quite sad, because that's the main goal. If you're in a business, you should really understand the impact that your project will have. Otherwise, there is no point in just doing a project just to do some cool data science stuff. That's not the goal in business. And also, doing it at the end is also not really worth it, because you're already done with the project. You've already spent time on this. So doing this in front and taking time to estimate the impact, I think it's something really important that's maybe not done enough in industry. And it's really, I think, the first thing to begin with, because if the value is small, or if you cannot provide any value, well, there is no point in doing this project.
Yeah, completely. And honestly, it has prevented us from making bad decisions. Data science projects are usually quite long, and well, at least in our case, it takes from 1 month to 3 months roughly. And you want to use that time wisely. And having this view of, best case scenario, I will only get like 10K euros out of this. Probably that's not worth it. And really, I was surprised. Sometimes at first sight, there were projects that seemed like a good idea, but the revenue generated compared to the cost was like not making it worth it. And also, like you're right about the fact that this is quite rare to do it beforehand, and sometimes you can hear that in some companies you do it afterwards, and I think it's still cool to do it afterwards, and we do it afterwards as well. And not only in order to compare, but also it's nice to it's a nice metric to share within the company. And it's a metric that, at least in my team, people take pride of. Like I work on like getting the company this amount of euros. It's really a cool incentive, for people to work, and be motivated.
Yeah, it's true that when you work on a project, like in the end, it's great to do data science stuff, but at least for me, one of the most interesting thing I think is impact. And if your solution doesn't get used, or if it gets used but doesn't add value, I don't really think it's a successful project. So
yeah.
And so the third thing before we finish the Qonto part is spreading the word to the business and making them aware that you're doing data science, I guess, and that data science can add value. So in a few words, how do you do that?
Yeah, regarding that, so I take examples of what we do. So when I had one project, I just took this project, almost in my hand, but on my laptop, and I went through to every team. Honestly, I think everyone, at Qonto has seen me saying, okay. Hey, I don't know you. Hi, nice to meet you. And I want to introduce myself and what are you doing? And then let me show what my team is doing. It doesn't have anything to do with what your team does, but this can give you ideas. And I showed the project like that. And as my team was doing more and more different projects, I like a salesman, I could adapt my speech to the people I was meeting with, and saying, okay, I see. So you're in finance and you're interested in forecast. So probably you could be interested in this thing that I've been doing for the growth department, which is also around forecast. What do you think? And that's how I got noticed and known at Qonto. And contrary to a salesperson who may not be interested in providing you value in what he or she sells to you. Here, I'm not my role is not to say that my team should be on every topic and everyone should come and see me. My goal is really to make the company grow and succeed. And I want to. So sometimes people just don't think of data science because they don't know what I can do. Mm-hmm. So I'm sharing this with them and making them aware of what we do, so that when time has come for them, they can reach out to me and we can work together on relevant topics. The prioritization on my end doesn't change. I'm still gonna say, okay, you come to me with this topic, mm-hmm. Cool. Let us work first on the impact assessment and see if it's worth it or not.
Okay, super interesting. Yeah, so basically, to summarize the Qonto part, it goes from building a team to deciding what to work on, and then it's kind of a back and forth between talking to other team to get projects from them, because you need to know what they need in order to start a project. But also, once you've built some project, you chat with them to let them know what you can do and basically inspire them so that they can think about you when they need you, and then ask you to work on a project and you can have impact.
Yeah, that's a great summary of my job. Yeah, totally.
So let's close the Qonto part and let's just ask one question on the career side of things before we finish the episodes. And maybe a long question, but we can divide it into two. But what are 3 advice that you have for data scientists? What should data scientists do to progress in their career, and what are 3 things that they shouldn't do? And maybe the 2 are related, but I'm curious to have your view on, what are your advice for career progression?
That's also a good question. Good double question even. One thing I would advise is to be aware of the value that you bring to the company. So you should try to estimate and understand your impact on the organization. you should have in mind first, like the goal of your company, and measure your impact. Really, I really recommend to do this exercise. You can measure in monetary terms, but there are other ways to measure it. I guess you can apply it to your own field if the monetary impact is not really speaking with you. But get some performance indicators if you don't have them already, and track them, and try to improve. And also would recommend not only keeping them for yourself, but sharing and exposing them to everyone inside your company, so that you can be recognized and rewarded on the impact that you have. So that's one point regarding how to progress in your career. Then I do have plenty of advice. So another one is because I was talking about visibility internally. I think also visibility externally is important. Don't hesitate to build your professional network. I think people underestimate the impact of writing a Medium article, for instance, going to conference as a speaker. This can really open doors and career opportunities. So I really advise and encourage people to do that. Also, in order to progress in the career, I would say keep learning, but that's the basic one. And it's more actually more to answer to the question what should you avoid doing to progress. I would say don't rely on what you learn at school. Avoid that. Just relying on your past knowledge. It's not going to work for you for a long time. Also, if I can switch to the things to avoid to progress in the career, I would say don't be the person who wants is enthusiastic data scientist, but really wants to use the one tool to every problem because this tool is super cool. We as data scientists can have sometimes this perception from others that we want to use fancy stuff, and I think you should really approach your work with a problem-solving approach and use the right tool for the right problem.
Yeah, that's great. No, thanks a lot. And thanks for all those great advice and for sharing your experience. It was great to chat with you. Have a great evening in Paris, and hope to catch up very soon.
Thank you, Neil. Thanks for having me.